Good evening. Tonight I'm going to take you through a review of the Bond Arms Bullpup 9mm. This one is serial number 135. I've had it for a few months and got to know the ins and outs of it. I'll take you through a variety of functions, and for safety's sake I'll reassure everyone that I'm using snap caps this evening, not live ammunition. There's a lot to like in this little package, and I do generally like the pistol. But bottom line up front, I'll have returned it to Bond by the time you see this. What I do like is you get a near full-length barrel in a very compact package. Although I'll have to say it's still just a little bit thick from left to right, and although the rosewood grips are pretty nice, they add a little bit to that bulk. If it were up to me, I'd probably put some micarta or something else like that on there. Another nice feature is the grooved front strap. That helps you keep a really good grip on the pistol. If you have small hands like me, you can just about get 3 fingers on the grip there, and it's pretty solid and secure. If you have larger paws, 2 fingers is probably what you'll end up with. Still in all, the recoil is pretty manageable, so I didn't have any issues if I worked it at the range with either 2 fingers or try to stuff 3 fingers in there. It does have 3-dot sights. They are not lit, but they are still pretty easy to acquire. The sights, both front and rear, are drift adjustable, and they are secured by grub screws to prevent accidental drift adjustment. Moving on to the magazines, they drop free really nicely when they're empty. I'll show you that. And it looks like it might be possible for the magazine button to be switched from one side to the other, because they have a notch on both sides of the magazine. As the magazine button is placed and manufactured right now, it will only operate from the left side of the frame. If you try to switch it over to the right side, the locking portion of it is in the wrong place. Although it is fairly simple to take the whole assembly apart. It's just a couple screws on either side. Magazine loading is interesting. The magazines don't have a follower, so you put the rounds directly down in on top of the spring, and you slide them in from the rear to the front. Now, for comparison's sake, I've got a .45 magazine, and you can see both of these forward is facing to my left side, and if we were to load around into the .45 magazine, it would go with the case rim in first and down in, slide to the rear. In this particular case, the round still faces forward when you put it into the pistol. It's just that the front of the cartridge goes into the front of the magazine and the rear is sticking out there. This is actually what is part of the function of the pistol. The slide has some extractor claws that reach in and grab onto this case rim and yank it out of the magazine from the rear. This is one of the reasons why Bond Arms tells you that you need to use crimped ammo. If you don't use appropriately crimped ammo, it is possible that when those extractor claws grab onto that and pull back with the movement of the slide, that you could actually pull the cartridge case right off the bullet, leave the bullet and the powder sitting in the magazine. That doesn't do any good. Now, with the standard recommended ammunition, the Winchester White Box, and some personal protection ammo that I've tried, I think that was Golden Saber. I didn't have any issues, no round separation, and again, recoil was manageable for both of those. Now, this gets to another thing. There is no last round hold open with the pistol. Once you fire that last round through there, we've got a magazine with 1 round in it. The extractor claws will pull that round out of the rear of the magazine, and it will be right there lined up in front of the barrel and ready to slide forward into the barrel, and then comes right on out. But again, there's no follower in the magazine to hold that slide to the rear, and even if there were, it wouldn't matter, because based on the function of the gun, you actually have to have the slide in the in battery position in order for those extractor claws to pick up the next round. So say we drop the magazine, put another magazine in, you have to cycle the action in order to get that next round up in there. Because what happens if you don't, and you leave that back to the rear, put another loaded magazine in there, all that's going to happen is the slide is going to ride right over the top of that, put the extractor claws back in position onto that next round at the top of the magazine, and then when you cycle the action again, it's going to pull that round up and in, and it'll be ready to go. There you go. Now, tear down and reassembly are pretty straightforward. It's just actuating this lever right here from pointing toward the rear of the pistol around to pointing toward the front of the pistol. So you pull the slide back to give you the opportunity, flip that around, and that slide assembly comes right off. That is the recoil spring. It's a tiny little thing, even smaller than what I have on my 1022s. And reassembly is pretty straightforward as well. Slide goes back on there, and if you get to the point where you have the pistol back here and it won't go back anymore, won't slide back, and won't push the hammer back down, there's a little tab at the base of the hammer that if you just put your thumbnail in there and put a little bit of pressure on it as you're pushing back, then the slide will come all the way back. You can flip the lever around and you're back in business. Too easy. So that's a rundown on most of the basic operation of the pistol. Generally, it's fairly likable. There's a couple things that might give you some problems. First off is the round selection. Based on the way that it works, you do need to use crimped rounds. If you don't, you'll end up with a mess in there. So you'll have a limited round selection, but I think you can still find something you like that works just fine. You'll also have minimal holster selection. Not a lot of people are making anything that'll fit this just yet. If you have big hands or just an odd grip, you might want to watch your fingertips or your thumb tips as you get further out onto the barrel or onto the slide, because it is fairly short, and the way the whole action sits further back over your hand might encourage a little bit of encroachment up into the muzzle area. As far as I'm concerned, the grips are pretty, but they're a little bit square right back here where the web of my hand goes in. It's not the most comfortable, but it's not a deal breaker for me. If I was keeping this pistol, I'd probably smooth that down a little bit, round it out, make it a little bit more easygoing. Just so you understand, because of the function of the pistol, when you slide the magazine up in there, there's no spring force pushing up against the slide. There's no follower, there's no anything like that to help the magazine drop free. In addition, because of those extractor claws are holding on to that cartridge at the top of the magazine, when you slide that in, it's not going to drop free. So you do need to pull a full magazine out rather than expecting it to come out on its own as an empty magazine would, just like so. So you remember earlier I said I was going to have already returned this pistol by the time you see this, and here's what the deal killer was for me. It's a slide lock when you try to reload under less than optimum conditions. I'll explain exactly what's going on. I found this out on a trip to the range with my brother when I had a number of occasions where I'd put a magazine in, and the slide would fail to, well, would lock. I just couldn't move it to the rear. Couldn't figure out what was going on. Called up, emailed Bond about it, and they had no idea what was happening. Took me a few nights, but over a little bit of time on the workbench, I figured out exactly what was happening. And it goes like this. For this magazine to work just right, and for the pistol to work right, you have to have the round fully forward in the magazine. And that positions the case rim to align directly with the extractor claws. So when you put the magazine in, the extractor claws grab the round, run it forward. And then every round after that works just fine because they're coming up from inside the magazine. They're positioned to line up directly with the extractor claws. Now, what happened with me at the range, and I've seen it on a couple other videos on YouTube, is that on occasion you'll start loading these magazines and you'll get in a hurry, or you might have had it in your pocket and jostled a little bit when you were pulling out of your pocket, whatever. But for whatever reason, that top round is not fully forward in the magazine, and it's only the difference of about 1/8 of an inch at most, but rather that top round is right along level with the back of the magazine. Now, what's bad about this is the magazine will still load just fine. Slides right up in there. But what I've just done is I've ensured that I'm going to lock the slide. And it's because at the base of the bolt face is a feed ramp, and that feed ramp has a little lip at the bottom of it that is now in front of the case rim. So when I try to pull this slide back, it's going to be locked in place, just like that. And you can beat on it all day long and it's not going anywhere. Also, because the case rim is not engaged with the extractor claws, but rather back behind that feed ramp at the base of the bolt face, the magazine is going to drop free because the extractor claws aren't holding on to the case rim. See? So I've got a magazine with rounds in it, but it still drops free as though there's nothing going on in there. Now, if I push that round forward just 1/8 of an inch or so, now when I try to drop the magazine, the extractor claws are holding on to the top round, so the magazine doesn't want to drop free unless I pull it. Okay? And I get a good load. So, the problem here is that you know, when you spend $1,000 on a pistol like this, you just expect it to work. To show you what I mean about the extractor claws, I'll give you a little close-up here. There's the claws that I'm talking about, and the round would normally go right in there at the top of the magazine, and it would be pointed out about like that. When you cycle the action, that causes the extractor claws to ride up across that feed ramp right there at my fingertip, and pushes the round into position so that it's ready to feed directly into the barrel, into the chamber. Now, in the case where the round is too far back in the magazine and it misses the grooves in the extractor claws, it actually goes right back behind that little lip and catches. Alright, and once it catches on that lip, then you're stuck, and the only thing you can do is drop the magazine, push the round forward, put the magazine back in. So again, you know, I spent $1,000 on this pistol, and when I spend that kind of money on a firearm, I expect it to work, and I expect it to work every time. This reliability issue with the magazine changes, you know, stressful reload situation, whatever you want to call it, that's just a deal breaker for me. It's a minor problem in a competition. It's a significantly more major problem in a self-defense scenario. So I had intended on using this as a carry gun, but I don't have the confidence in it, especially with a stressful reload situation. your mileage may vary.